Welcome to the Independence by Design podcast, where we discuss what it means to be a business owner and ways to get unstuck from the day-to-day so we can design a business that gives us a life of independence. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Today, you're in for a treat. We're going to be tackling, I think, one of the biggest sources of anxiety of my clients who are owner-operators, which is how to optimize and systematize the culture while you're there or not. And there's so much fluff about culture and leadership that I even hate saying those words, but that is the opposite of this conversation. Bill Mills is on the show with me. He is the founder of a CEO peer group. He's put on 1,300 peer group meetings over the last 3 decades, and he built a process called the leadership process, which has reverse engineered how the most effective and high-performing teams bridge the execution gap. So instead of just having your rocks and your VTO out there and hoping everybody's doing the work or building all the mechanical things that I talk about from the financials, the value growth strategies, etc., the culture becomes the mechanism for you to execute all your goals. But so many times our cultures are filled with drama, friction, communication issues, and Bill's leadership process through the theory of constraints and atomic habits talks about how we can integrate a process to systematically build these high-performing teams ongoing to compound the ability for your culture to execute what you want, which then gives you the relief and the peace of mind that if you're going to step back, you understand how your team's performing and helping you get to your goals. This is going to be an episode I know you're not going to regret listening to, because as you'll hear me throughout the conversation, I get more and more excited because of how actionable and tangible the process is that Bill's going to unpack. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with a friend that you think would value it and give the show a rating. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Bill, this is a long time coming, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Good to see you again.
Yeah, very excited about this. We'll give you a little bit of an opportunity to give your background for the audience, because I think the background and what you've been working on for a lot of your career will give some insight to why we're going to be talking about the framework that you are going to be discussing with leadership, because it's I think the topic that you're tapping into is a loaded question, loaded topic, kind of like strategy and all that stuff that just is a lot of fluff around it, but you've got some meat behind it. But you've been working with CEOs and owners as a peer group owner for quite a while. You want to give a little bit of just a little cliff note of how you got to what you're doing and what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. Well, actually, I've been doing management consulting since 1989. So this is like year 35 for me. And then I've been doing peer groups with business owners, CEOs, presidents. I've been doing peer groups since 2001. So 23 years there. I was adding it up just prior to the podcast because it's a scary number. But I've sat in now on, I think, a little over 1,300 peer group meetings.
Wow.
And that pushes me, I think, a little bit north of 4,000 hours I've spent sitting with CEOs talking about what CEOs want to talk about. So
it's not made up, right? And you know what's fascinating, Bill, about what I think about your job or even what I'm doing is like it's like this accumulation of anecdotal stories, because like you and I can't or the listeners in here can't just go look up onto Bloomberg and be like, what's going on in the privately held market? I mean, it takes the accumulation of the hours to really know what's the actual problem going on, which I think is got a ton of value to the audience.
yeah, if you listen long enough, the same themes keep coming around. And these are themes you can look up. You can go find a business book, and get a Peter Drucker book, and he'll point you in the right direction. So it's not like it's unknown. But where the rubber meets the road and where people are trying to work through their specific issues with people that they care about and customers that they care about, and it's their money on the line, and their college fund has been set aside to the kids' college fund is funding their enterprise. It's a lot different than when you read it in a Harvard Business Review. But I tell you. I have this warehouse of experiences that aren't mine. they're everybody
Right.
else's. But there's so much wisdom in how people figure this stuff out, especially in the small to medium-sized companies, and that's where we tend to operate.
You just pretty much summed up my mission, my friend. It's like, hey, the people listening in, they don't have the ability to get those 4,000 hours. I mean, they're living their own world, whatever, operating business that they've got. And it's up to you and I to contextualize it. And that's one of your, the discipline or one of the principles I think is pretty cool in your framework. But so you got leadership. You want to, because what I wanted to do for you and for the audience, but that's why we hit record before we even had any of that prep talk, is like, coming at you with the independence by design ownership framework, which I think will even provide more context to why the topic that you're talking about is so damn important. But why don't you just give us a little bit of a teaser of like, okay, what is this framework that you put together, and then we can unpack it.
Yeah, I think especially if I loop it into the 8 value drivers that you talk and teach about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, at the end of the day, if you own a company, there's the revenue and the profit and the enjoyment that you get out of running the company. And then one day, like all things, what do you do at the end? And ideally, you've got something incredibly valuable in the world that somebody else will pay you top dollar for, and that's kind of the icing on the cake of having a great experience along the way. And I look at the execution gap. I mean, if you look at Bain
Ooh,
and
I like how you put
Company
that.
has a really interesting research that they came out with a few years ago. They said that on average, executives would agree that their execution gap is about 40%, meaning here's a target we should be able to hit, and we're coming in 40% under. And
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
and some of that is almost by design, which I think is why would you design it this way? And I'll just pick a little bit on the EOS traction, folks. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I believe in what they're doing, and yet they say getting 80% of your goals accomplished every quarter is good enough. I'm like, no, it's not. That's building in a 20% execution gap. I mean, what message are you sending? Because then it's pretty soon it's 80% of 80%. I think people would rather rise to a high standard and achieve it maybe just by their fingernails, they get over the precipice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most fun. And so building
That's fascinating.
in a
And I
gap
think
makes no sense to me.
well, that's a perfect tee up, because, and then I'll fill in a couple more gaps from like a philosophy perspective, because since you and I've known each other for years, my stuff's evolved, and the listeners have kind of been on that journey, and I think this will give clarity of the puzzle piece that you have identified of the execution gap, and I see a lot of that too. And so, Bill, what I have, with the ownership framework that I've worked on and that has evolved since I went out on my own, I believe that if the owner operator can have an ownership framework to then guide the operations, which then I always say, like, the operations is the EOS or the scaling up of the OKRs, the great game of business, like, is super important. But what I think is so fascinating, Bill, is like the owner of a business needs to know what they want. And the more clear that they can become, it's so much easier to translate that down into any rank and file to make sure that they understand how what they're doing fits into the big picture. And I think, Great Game of Business does some of that with it, because they're connecting everything down to the financials, which I'm a huge proponent of, Bill. But from the owner perspective, if they can identify what they want out of their time, how much they want out of cash flow.
Yeah.
So from distributions, because the goals are kind of, the goal is that they want to extract themselves from the need to have that W-2 income. So if they want to make, call it 2 to 500 or a million, whatever it is, through distributions, all of the operations has to satisfy the owner's distributions and then the equity target. And, I always joke around, Bill, like private equity firms, they don't jump into a new purchase and say, what should we do?
Right.
It's like internal rate of return in this period. ESOPs are usually more clear because they've got the, they went that direction for a reason, which is going to insert Great Game of Business. But and this is where I'm finding this execution gap and the communication leadership gap that I think we're going to be discussing today, is the owners that I'm talking to. They're like, how do I take what I want and then drive that communication all the way down to then into the operations
and into action?
Does that make and into action? And but the thing is too, Bill, is like some people have some hesitation of like being, and they don't need to be as mechanical as a PE firm, because the timeline is arbitrary for them, but it's not, it's arbitrary because they made it up, but then it becomes as important. But I think the validity of like the Great Game is like, hey, well, like the income statement is going to reflect the goals, but you have to have the goals clear, but it's not only about the finance. And I think there's this big gaping hole that it seems to me that you've been honing in on. Is that a fair?
Yeah. Yeah, boy, I got like 5 ideas here. So, absolutely clarity of the desired end state, clarity of what is it that we want to create, and the thing about entrepreneurs is it doesn't all have to be about how much hits the bottom line. It can be about lifestyle. It can,
Mhm.
it's their baby to create any way they want. And
Boom. I love it. I like it a lot.
I think there's a quote by Michelangelo, I saw an angel in the stone and I carved to set it free. And I think that is the entrepreneurial vision. I mean,
Oh, so good.
entrepreneurs are pretty creative. They're like, I see this block of stone and I'm going to turn it into something magnificent. And usually it is to bring value to the world. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, oh, I'm going to bring crap, and people will buy my, maybe that's,
I do have a friend that owns a porta potty business, so maybe.
well, I mean, value shows up in lots of different,
In different ways.
yeah. And when you get to my age, there's even more value in that. So
But I think what's interesting about, I want to highlight something that you said that I think a lot of my audience, and I know my clients resonate with, is what is value? And value is not just distributions and equity target. And so many people, I think, end up accidentally misunderstanding what I am proposing, being a proponent of, because money becomes the means to get what you want, but you have to be clear on what you want. And the intangible value of the culture, the people, the community is something that the clients and audience that you and I share also resonate with,
yeah,
but then it has to be communicated in a way. And Bill, every single one of my coaching calls that I'm on with my group calls on Tuesdays, they're like, how do I communicate that? And how do I find the leaders and the team members
yeah,
to instill it? Because they're like this walking mascot of that intrinsic value, but they don't know how to like extract that, because they can extract the financials or a
yeah.
strategic plan, but like there's that big missing piece that actually creates them a lot of anxiety as they want to step back and perpetuate that.
Yeah. So we talked about the execution gap, but there is a management gap. There is a engagement gap. There is probably a strategy gap, in the marketplace, and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to the Texas two-step of success, right? Is I have a winning strategy and I can execute it like crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's culture and talent and people can execute. And it always comes down to culture and people and talent. Even if you have a web based business where basically you're just distributing stuff, somebody somewhere has to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And that execution gap can get broken down into a variety of things. But like the management gap, if Gallup is right, and they insist that they are, 82% of managers are mishired, meaning wrong person, wrong seat. 4 out of 5
Oh my God,
managers.
that's a big number.
Just think about that. And
I mean, I believe it actually.
well, and they get into why. They say, well, because we take a strong individual performer and then we just promote them because that's the only thing, and they
Mm-hmm.
act like that's a bad thing. And I would go, well, geez, Gallup, who were we supposed to promote? The low individual performer? You got to give
Yeah,
us a little bit of credit that we're trying, but what they're saying,
we're trying.
there are people that are natural managers, meaning they know how to naturally build team. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we miss in leadership development. We don't realize, no, we're solving for teamwork. We're solving for high performing teams, but then we somehow default to, oh, it's the leader. It's the manager. Gallup even wrote a book called It's the Manager, and they laid the whole thing at the feet of poor management. And I would say, well, look, I'm a recovering structural engineer. I think everything is a process. I think there's an equation for everything. I mean, I get it. I drive people crazy, but what if leadership was a process and it's face to face, it's behavioral. It's not read a book, go to a class, think about leadership. It is get into the trenches and do it. And nobody knows what to do. You and I can go off to a class and we'll learn how to have a crucial conversation, and we'll even practice it, and it'll work great because it's a contrived environment. You know what you're supposed to ask. I know what I'm supposed to say. We both read the play. Then you go back to your team, and Bernie was not at the class on crucial conversations, and the whole thing falls apart immediately.
Well, it's like the whole church camp syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, and you come back. So, um, I love it. So before you keep going, like maybe contextualize for the audience. You know, you've got operating systems like
Yeah.
EOS. You've got other. So, like, what did you see was the massive problem? I'm hearing you. Maybe that's where you're continuing
Yeah.
to go. But then, what's out there right now, and why are those things missing parts? Because I think I heard you say, and I said the same thing. We're like, there's a good time and place for these different systems, but they have to be combined with other things.
Yeah. So EOS, love EOS, no problem with it really, other than I like to pick at it. They basically are a focusing mechanism. Let's focus our energy on
I
these
like it.
rocks, right? Let's focus our energy and do something. But they don't really help people be better leaders in the EOS process. They, at the head of your accountability chart is LMA, lead, manage, and hold people accountable. Okay, and then get into your role. It's like, no, that is your job. Your job is to create high performing teams. And so,
And then you got the get it, wants it, got the capacity, but I mean, like, but then what, right? Like, how do you,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
even push back on that, Ryan. So here's why. If you think about, let's, have you heard the turtle on a post analogy?
no, but I'm excited for it.
You're driving down a road, country road, all these wooden fence posts. You're driving 60 miles an hour and out of the country. What was that? You hit the brakes, you back up. My gosh, there's a turtle on a post. Yeah. How did a turtle get on a post? And there's only one answer. Somebody promoted them. That's how they get.
It's the whole, yeah, the Peter principle, right?
Yeah.
But just it's a turtle.
Yeah. But it applies in teams too. So let's say I'm the manager of a team and you're a brand new hire. You're excited to be part of the organization. I think you've got what it takes. You think you've got what it takes. So it isn't around your natural motivation or engagement. You come in on day one engaged. Now Gallup says only 30% people stay engaged, which suggests that maybe we're killing them, along the way. And so I look at everything a little backwards. And I think we should be solving for disengagement because I hired you engaged. We should just make sure that I stop disengaging you and let your natural engagement move forward.
Interesting.
So to kind of get to your question, so on the GWC, I look at you and I go, boy, Ryan doesn't get it. Maybe he doesn't want it. I don't know. Maybe it's just his capacity. I don't know what the problem is, but the problem is clearly Ryan doesn't get it, want it, or have the capacity, which means I'm pointing a finger at you when really I should say, well, let's see. Are our rewards and recognition systems and support systems such that you want to be doing what you're doing, or are we disengaging you, saying, "Hey, you should be part of a team, but we reward you for individual effort"? Well, that would be an intrinsic, environmental dissatisfier. Do I, use some of the Gallup stuff? Do I give you all the tools and resources you need to do your job or not? Do I give you all the information you need to be successful or not? Do I give you the authority to be successful so you can make decisions on your own? Do I give you the contacts and relationships? Do I put you in a healthy team or do I put you in a toxic team? And you have to sit next to Fred, who's just miserable. Does the team actually have your back and try to support you, or does the team say, "Yeah, well, nobody helped us. Yeah, figure it out on your own"? And the result of that is I see your behavior, and I don't go, "Well, wait a minute. All that other stuff I described, that's on me. That's."
Well, you just hit something, Bill, that really resonates with me. And it's like, for example, with my health, is I take a what the hell did I screw up first? Like what shit did I not do, or what did I do that created this situation, instead of go to the medicine first? You know what I mean? Like, and so it's just like because what I want, and I think I know a lot of my clients would resonate with what you're saying, is that I want to know what I didn't do right first, so that way I can correctly assess the person. And I think and do you find this too, Bill, where like there's a lot of the people that I think you and I work with where they're inherently good people and inherently trustworthy first, or trusting first. But what happens is that gap that you're talking about, you're not like, you're trying to help that person succeed, but you don't know how to, where to place the blame. And then therefore it kind of all falls into this like weird conflict.
Well, and blame is an interesting word. Are we trying to fix the breakdown or fix blame? And so I think it's more about responsibility. And so there's two in the leadership process, which we haven't really discussed yet, but there's two sort of philosophical foundational questions. And frankly, if you just took these two questions to heart, you could fix most of the gaps in your organization without ever going through the process, because it's leadership is mostly mindset. So the first question is, how did I create this? So that is based on the leadership process philosophy that my team members' response, their behavior, is their response to my stimulus. That's their response to my leadership process. And I've got 15 different people on my team, and I might have 15 different responses. I'm trying to lead them all one way, right? I'm just being a hammer, or I'm being super compassionate, or I'm just giving them lots of space, or I'm micromanaging. I have one style, and it might work with one out of the 15, but the other 14, I think, well, they just don't get it, want it, and can't have the capacity to do it. When really, I have to, it's like Little League. You have to meet each kid where they're at, and you have to be the coach that kid needs. And the leadership process takes it a little bit step further and says, well, wait a second, we're solving for a high performing team. We're all adults here. Why don't we learn the process together? You wouldn't send a quarterback off to learn a play without sending the team to go and learn it and practice it with them. Nobody would do that. Navy SEALs don't say, well, we all know how to shoot, let's go fight. They say, let's have a plan. What's your role? What's my part? If this happens, what do you do? If that happens, what do I do? They have a plan, and they have contingency plans on contingency plans. And then they go out and fight. And guess what? They win like 99% of the time. So the leadership process takes that idea of, no, we're solving for a high performing team. It's not this trickle down leadership economics where we send the top team off to leadership school, and then we can't worry why it never got to the bottom line of the organization.
So I want to. What's the second question then? Why don't you give the framework, and we can start unpacking it?
Yeah. So the leadership process is just this.
Well, what was the second question? What was the second question? Because you said the first question is, what did I do to create?
Oh yeah. And then the second question. Yeah. Okay. So this is the killer question. Have you come across the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you recall, he talks about logos therapy. Anyway, he says we walk around saying, what's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of all this? He said, those are the wrong questions. The question is, what's my purpose in this moment? That's a question that you can answer, and it's generative. And so I've tweaked it just a little bit, and I say, as a leader, as a manager who is responsible for the development of a team, what's my purpose in this moment with this fallible human being? Because we're all fallible. And if you think about that, I mean, it's really easy to go, yeah, we're not perfect. No. Then why do we expect perfection? Why do we get so upset when somebody has a mistake? Why do we get so wigged out when we miss our goal? Because we don't fully appreciate that we are fallible people working with fallible people. And the best we ever can be is fallible. We can't be better than fallible. So now I'm the manager. I'm a fallible manager of a fallible team. And I have to say, okay, so how did I create this? We got here somehow. And what's my purpose in this moment with this fallible human being who just, fell on their face or didn't hit their goal? And it's a humanizing question. I mean, you can't ask that question unless you're a psychopath. Psychopaths could blow right past this, but anybody else would.
Which is only 4% of the population.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully.
So we ask the question and we go, okay, I'm fallible, you're fallible. Your behavior, I own your results because I put you in this situation. I'm going to have a very different conversation with somebody who missed the mark when I go, you know what, I don't know that I set you up for success. Let's go back and look at, did you have everything at your disposal you needed to be successful? And that's not the way a typical breakdown conversation goes. A typical breakdown conversation is a little power over. Why didn't you do it? Well, why did you do that? Well, that was dumb.
Hmm.
But if you look at, again, to the military, when they do after action reviews and they do debriefs, without rank, everybody just says, this is what happened. And that's the process that produced this outcome. And there's no personality, no emotion. It is simply the factual. Our outcome was perfectly designed by the process we followed. If we didn't like the outcome, we got to redesign the process. And that's why I call it the leadership process.
And that's iterative then, right? I mean, because you can't look at that. You can't look at what to iterate if you can't be objective with what happened without all that other stuff.
Well, that's the beauty of a process. So what is a process? It is the link, kind of the appropriate right action in the appropriate right sequence produces quality or a sale or a strong bottom line, right? And the beauty of a process is exactly what you said, is it can be improved over time. You can always find something to do. Our definition of leadership is leaders take action to create a better future. That's
Well, I like that.
that's the definition that we've landed on. And by that definition, you can always take another action. You are never done. If you're committed to an outcome, there's another action you can take, and another one, and another one. And so that's what I like about that definition. And so the leadership process is, this will blow your mind at first. It's an enterprise-wide, organization-wide initiative that everybody goes through. Why would you take everybody through a leadership process? Because we're going through a team effectiveness process. That's why.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody's on the same team because it's all tied to the same organization. It's
Exactly.
one.
You can't have the
Yep.
marketing team do it and then the operations team not do it and then think that they speak the same language. Everybody has to learn to play together. And so you wouldn't do gap analysis, teach everybody gap analysis in the finance department and then say, okay, but you don't really have to follow it. You have to
Hmm.
follow it, and it's forever.
Well, and before you continue, Bill, like, what I think is super fascinating is, so like I think in systems, and like it's a complex system. Well, each system has some general fundamental goal, or like each. Let me see if I can say this right. Thinking out loud is like each complex system has a couple set of fundamental principles that keep it alive.
Right.
So in a business, it's free cash flow, which then generates more value. And like our body, it's like, well, we have to be healthy, right? And it's like down to the mitochondria, down to the genome, which is why I always go like, even to like economics. Like, I mean, like, so I say all that because why would you look at everybody? It's because it's part of one system. And like, it's the same reason that I absolutely have so much disdain for the healthcare system. I had a doctor that literally said to my sister, well, we've isolated your there's part of her blood. I'm like, you isolated that?
Yeah.
Like, it's literally in her blood, which is part of the body. And so like, and then I think that back to like the business consulting space is everybody's looking at it. All the consultants are looking at it in fragments, and then all the departments are looking at it fragments, and it just is total insanity to me. So I think I'm just validating what you're saying, where like it might seem like a lot, but like how else would you tackle it?
I love the body analogy because you're right. If it isn't in the air that we're all breathing, if we're not all um, going in the same direction, fully committed, bringing our full commitment and creativity to solve any problems that come along the way, that's how you got a high performing team. But you don't want, finance going this way, operations going that way. You want alignment around all of it. And
Yep.
that's why I landed on leadership. And I almost wish there was a different word for it because, everybody's kind of resigned themselves to, geez, not another leadership program. God save us all.
Yeah.
I should find another name for it, but
But it's the people. It's. I'm tracking where you're going with this, and I'm liking it because, I mean, I can understand where people would have hesitation, but if it's coming at it from the first principle, how things work, and at the end of the day, the people create the goods or services for their customers that results in
yeah,
an income statement, cash flow, and balance sheet. The cash flow, debt, balance sheet, and income statement don't come first. And I think like all of our clients, Bill, or the people listening, know that. It's
yeah,
the conscious capitalism. The business has a soul
yeah,
and a DNA, but then there's not very many people or anybody I've met until this conversation that like has broken that down into a process that can be articulated. It's all this natural EQ
yeah.
that the owner operator has that they don't know how to extract that from their head or their actions.
And it's not their fault. It's they are doing what they've seen everybody else do. We have a manager, and then they've got some line leads, and they got and we structure our organizations the same, and we think about it the same. This is how bad it's gotten, Ryan. I Googled this 2 weeks ago. This is hilarious. There are 57,136 books on Amazon with leadership in the title.
Oh my gosh.
So, clearly we haven't quite landed on the secret sauce of leadership. And that's why I'm saying maybe we shouldn't call it leadership, but because we're solving for high performing teams. The military has no problem with Gen Z coming into the Marine Corps. They like, we know how to build teams. It doesn't, come on in here. I don't care what your economic status is. I don't care what your intelligence level is. I don't care what your gifts
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
qualities
Yep,
are.
yep.
We know how to build team, and we're not freaked out by any of this generational differences baloney that's floating around.
Mm. Yeah, I'm tracking you.
And so why don't we take a page out of the military or professional sports teams that understand that, no, if we want to be successful, let's practice successful processes like TQ, total quality management, like lean process manufacturing, like the theory of constraints. Pick a process. Everybody's, but where is your human's process? Does every single team and every people or all the people on your team, do they accept and make promises the exact same way? I mean, that's called delegation, right? No, we delegate. No. I don't want to get delegated to. I want to look you in the eye and you say, Bill, I got this. I understand exactly the desired end state you want. I understand the conditions of satisfaction. I've negotiated with you till I have complete clarity and confidence that I'm your man. I can do it. You can count on me. Here I go. And it's like, I trust you. What we do is we have these sloppy little, they're not even really agreements. They masquerade as agreements. As, hey, Ryan, I need you to get this done by Saturday. Or I don't even do that. I need you to.
Well, and no communication, to your point. Like there's such little clarity on what good looks like as the outcome. And like Brene Brown touches on that a little bit in her material, just like in just normal relationships where like, and my old partner, Pat Hobby, used to say to be clear is to be kind, but like it takes a lot to be clear because like back to like your whole, what's my role in the failures? Like I probably didn't communicate because there's just all these heuristics and assumptions that you just understood what I meant. And it's like, that's just absurd to begin with, because how many witnesses can watch the same crime and they all think different things?
Well, so let's get into it a little bit. So you're my boss and you come to me and you want me to handle a project. That's great. I want to do it. And you think you're being clear. I mean, we all think we're being clear. Even then, when people point out to us later that, like, why did you say the word fuse box when you meant, receptacle? They said, I didn't say fuse box. Yeah, you did. I did. I thought. I mean, we don't even know what we're saying sometimes because we're just, we're burning up. So I just come from the perspective of, hey, we're doing the best we can, but a lot of times our requests are half baked. Not meaning they're stupid, meaning we just haven't fully baked them yet. And so now you're my boss and you ask me to do something and I say, okay, Ryan, so when you say as soon as possible, you mean like by the end of the month? And I said, no, I mean by like Friday. Oh, Friday. Oh, that just changed everything. And but I can go out and spend $150,000 in order to get it done by Friday, right? No, you can't spend 100. You can spend two thousand
Right.
dollars. Okay, so in that case, then can I have the full resources of the finance department for the next 3 days? No, you can have them for one day. Okay, well,
Oh, and by the way, you still have to do that proposal for the client
yeah,
that was also telling you. Yeah.
yeah. And well, now Friday is starting to look like, geez, maybe that's an unrealistic expectation. But somewhere in there, we negotiate till we got to, okay, I will do that. And here's where it gets interesting. Because we were raised in a power over world, parents are over kids, teachers are over kids, cops are over kids, the president is over everybody. We're in this hierarchy, which is fine. And we tend to just carry that around. And when you are a manager and you're up a rung, you have this positional power, but
Yeah.
then we think that's the same as power. It ideally it's adult to adult conversation because you need me as to get it done just as much as I need you to kind of set direction and speed. So an interesting thing happens. Now I say, okay, I promise, which is different from uh-huh, uh, okay, got it. Um, right. I mean, we see all these fake commitments and the person is making them fake on purpose because they have integrity and they know if they go I promise, they know they don't in that moment, so they're just
Mm-hmm.
but then we hold them like, well, you promised. Like, no, I said okay.
I said, uh-huh.
Uh-huh. So there's a lot of dynamic here. Have you ever asked somebody to do something, they said okay, and you knew from their tone of voice and you knew that they didn't get it and they weren't going to be successful, and you said all right, and you let them go off, and sure enough they were wrong?
Okay, I gotta tell you, this is a digression, but I think it's so funny. So my dad has for sure the worst ADHD out of any human being I've ever met, and not some like fluffy, like I mean, like never been clinically diagnosed, doesn't take any meds for it, and they like got him to, he
Yep.
was uber successful. Anyways, so I was on a phone because I to what you're saying, like I learned, and I think there's probably a lot to do with what I do today, which is very mechanical because it's about clarifying what the goddamn expectations are. Because like
Exactly.
I was on the I was on the phone with him, Bill, and I was like, "Hey, did you read that tweet I sent you or watch that tweet?" He's like, "Uh huh, yeah." I was like, "Dude, Dad, did you watch it?" Yeah. I was like, hello. He's like, what? And like, I knew he wasn't listening.
Yeah.
And so like, cause like, to your point, there was so much of that I had to fill in the gaps growing up as a child, but then also like, now it's just funny because like, I
Yeah.
mean, he can do whatever he wants. But like, to your point, there's this like, it's so much easier, and well, whether it's someone's conflict avoidance or they're scared of their job or their performance review, where it's easier to do that and just move on because we're just going to assume, but reality will snap back when the outcome wasn't delivered.
Yep.
And so for me, I guess my point is like, I know exactly what you're talking about because I got it this weekend when I was talking on the phone. I'm like, dude, you're not listening to me at all, but you're saying the right things.
But you learned that skill through trial and error. Is like this.
Oh yeah,
There's
because
so
I
many ways this can go wrong. So
yeah.
here's the joke I do with a group of people when I'm talking about clarity of expectations. I'll say, hey, um, I need a screwdriver. How many now? If I asked all of you in the group, hey, can you bring me a screwdriver? How many ways can we screw that up? And people start laughing and they go, okay, well, you want a Phillips or do you want a flathead or do you want a number one Phillips, a number two Phillips? Do you want a ratchet? The more I said,
Does it have to? Yeah, exactly.
do you want it to be at a right angle so that and so you just
Yeah.
ask all these questions and people start laughing about how many ways you can screw that up. And I go, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I just wanted an orange juice and vodka. How are we so far off?
That was my favorite drink. Oh yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh,
but
funny.
now it gets more complicated. Now it is, hey, the company needs a new vehicle. Hey, somebody from finance, go out and get us a new vehicle. Like, you got to ask a lot of questions about this. So now you bring it down to working with your teammate, and hopefully we clarify expectations. And now I go off. I'm the performer. You're the basically the customer in this moment, and I'm the
Mhm.
performer. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Now, whose responsibility is it to get it done? It's the performers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm going to go, now Mike Tyson, I'm going to go out and I have a plan, and reality is going to punch me in the face. And so something that we planned for shows up that wasn't what we planned for. Now what?
It's back to the Navy SEALs where we can, if we've clarified it, we can all assess what actually went wrong based on the base case that we.
And in that moment, if the project is still live, then I can come back and I can say, "Hey, Ryan, reality showed up different than I have to
Yeah.
renegotiate. I
Yep.
thought I had the full resources of the finance teams. Turns out Julie's on leave and Fred's on vacation. I don't have the full, it's like, okay, reality sets in. I
Yep.
have a responsibility to keep you in the loop and keep you informed. How many times has a project broken down? And in the post-mortem, if you do one, you realize, I wonder if everybody was 100% committed to this. Were they just sort of interested, or were they committed? Because committed is different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you know what? I'm not sure everybody was committed. Well, I wonder why. Was it because they said yes to something that they didn't fully understand? Did they say yes to some vague, output? It's like, yeah, probably they weren't crystal clear on the outcome. Well, do you think maybe they didn't keep everybody in the loop, that things started to go south and nobody spoke up when it's like, yeah, probably somebody saw it well before it turned into a dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the courage and the humility to ask for help when you need it? Does you think maybe somebody knew they were failing and didn't ask for help? Or do you think maybe we saw Bill failing and nobody bothered to ask him if he needed help? I mean, just those four little criteria. This is part of the leadership process, by the way. First, I bring my
Yeah, I want to say I want to get into the structure of it, so that way, because keep going, because I want yeah,
Yeah, but
keep
I
going.
bring my
But
full commitment. I negotiate complete clarity. I refuse unclear. I mean, would you rather have a uncommitted yes or a committed no? Well, as much as I don't want people saying no to me because I'm on a power trip typically, I want people to give me a committed no if that's true reality. No, Bill, no, I can't commit to that because this is what's
mm-hmm.
preventing me
Mm-hmm.
from giving you a voluntary commitment. So, and the third one is keep me in the loop, and the fourth one is, hey, ask for help, offer help. So those are just some standards of professionalism that we've designed. The leadership process starts with this idea that, hey, we're leaders because every person can take action to create a better future. So everybody can lead. So it's distributed leadership throughout the organization, and we're professionals. We get paid. This is not amateur hour. We actually get paid. And so when you set the standard of professionalism is, if you're a professional, you bring your full commitment every day. If you're a professional, you negotiate absolute clarity so you can make a committed yes. If you're a professional, you keep people in the loop. The minute this thing goes south, you go back and renegotiate. You do whatever you have to do so there's no surprises. And if you're a
Mm-hmm.
professional, you're humble enough to ask for help if you need it, and you're humble enough to offer help to somebody else, and you get ego out of it. So those are four standards of professionalism. We start the whole leadership process.
Just clarified again. So we got distributed leadership.
Yep.
2 is context will win over content, right?
Yes.
Let me know, because I'm looking at the notes you'd sent
Oh,
me,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then results. So that's that. Then the number 3 is that professionalism, right? And then 4 is transparency and accountability. I mean, so is that the 4 principles that you're talking
They're
about?
kind of the design criteria. So
Okay.
we're probably confusing the audience. I should slow down and just.
No, it's because here's what I want to make sure that we nail for the audience is that I believe that you have built back to your process. Like, this is because I think here's what I see all the time, Bill, is like, there's a lot of talk about the problem, which and we've had a fun, amazing conversation, but I want to make sure, because I think you've nailed it with some of your stuff here, is that then what?
Yeah.
And like, how do we articulate this so that way, when we're in that situation, what are back to the skill set that the Navy SEALs have? Like, there has to be this trained skill set,
Yeah.
and you've got your whole process, how you get that through the organization.
Yeah.
Because if I'm the audience, it's like, okay, that's a big task. It's the whole organization, and everything you're talking about is kind of EQ stuff that is very subjective. And so like you're making this where it's very actionable.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think I can clarify it this way. We're solving for high performing teams because teams get stuff done, right? It's otherwise you're hoping for some individual to somehow, I mean, you have these heroes, but if you build a high performing team, then you've got a process. Okay, so
Well, and you're making that outcome repeatable, right? Because I think what happens is like, Bill, like every one of my clients, like there's a handful that have hired presidents before and they've kind of got this rocking and rolling. But I'd say that the number one thing that holds people back from hiring that president or that exec team so they can step back is like this fear of like, it's going to be random and a stroke of luck that I find Bill who randomly gets me perfectly and gets my culture perfectly, and it's all up to chance. But if you build a high performing team, I mean, you said it about the Army and the Navy SEAL and the military. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, your demographic, or anything. Like, we're going to bring you in here, and you're having a repeatable outcome because you've got a process. Is that a fair way of putting it?
That's excellent. And so the way you do that is you flip traditional leadership development theory on its head. You don't send a leader off to class. You teach the team how to solve the few problems that stand in the way of high performance. So if you think of a high performing team, what would they be really, really good at? Well, probably they'd be really, really good at making and keeping promises. And I was just sharing with you some of the process by which you get to make and keep big promises. What else would they be really, really good at? Well, they'd probably be really good at recovering from a breakdown. So they'd have some process of when they fall flat on their face, they figure it out quickly, they respond, they adapt, they move on. So that would be a key process. Another key process would be, you know what, we got to be able to talk to each other about how we're showing up. You're not really carrying your load there, or hey, you're taking on too much. So how you show up. So feedback, by the way, there's the results are in, the psychiatrists, psychologists agree, there's no such thing as constructive feedback. There's either positive feedback or constructive feed forward, meaning going forward, Ryan, here's what I'm asking of you. Because if I try to, here's my Dr. Phil impression. Even God can't change the past. So trying to go backwards and give constructive feedback about what you should have done is like, give me a break.
Right. I love it.
I should have done what I did do because I did it. That was the only thing that made sense to me in that moment. But going forward, great insight. Next time, so I can give you constructive feed forward, and you can hear that and not be a defensive. So let's see, what do we got? Making, keeping promises, recovering from breakdown, giving feedback, probably a way to observe if your process is working and improve it along the way. So continuous improvement. I've already got 4 things in. If your teams were doing that, you'd have a high performing team. I still got one more finger on my hand I can work off of. It's just not that much. But we don't teach teams how to do that. And if you look at across an organization, most teams, there's some type of a handoff. It's a handoff of information. It's a handoff of responsibility. And we fumble the handoffs. Once, and this is why we have silos. I can do my thing really good, but as soon as I have to hand off to you, the cross-functional collaboration. This is one of the top things I hear in the peer groups, by the way. What are one of the things that just frustrate the heck out of you? God, we're silos. Our departments don't talk to each other. The left hand does something that screws up the right hand, and nobody ever fixes it. Well, it's these dotted line responsibilities, because work flows through your organization, this way.
Well, this goes back
we
to like
build
the
design
complex
this way.
Well, right. And I think where I think what becomes very powerful, like if there's some assumption, like, I mean, and I always struggle, Bill, because people hear finance a lot, but like, that's the goddamn scorecard, right? Like, so like we have one income statement for a company, right? And it's all tied together. So to have like a silo. It's back to your body's one thing. You can't just hack off your leg and just like it's part of your body. And
Yeah.
so I think to your point, like what I've been trying to help out with is like it's the goal, and understanding the goal is one of my things. And well, the business to breathe, cash flow is the oxygen. And the cash flow comes from an income statement and a good plan of all that, but then all that going forward to continue it. But then it's the people interacting inside that organization that create that scorecard.
Yeah.
And then if they're interacting correctly, tied to the bigger goal that's clearly identified. I mean, going back to, I think what you were saying, like what's so, and I think this, as we're having this conversation, I mean, one of the biggest things that I struggled with was like, I mean, my father was so poor at giving at expectations.
Mhm.
So it was always like, where's the hammer going to drop from?
Right.
And so like all that clarification became natural survival technique for me. But then you realize that that's in the organizations that, I mean, that's the breakdown is what's the goal and how does everything fit together? Because the silos, it just actually doesn't even make any sense. Like
No.
y'all are working together towards one goal because you're all part of one company.
So you're saying it exactly right. There's interaction, it's action, it's behavior. We're not solving
Mm-hmm.
for behavior because, human behavior, I can't tell you what to do. Like, that's crazy. You hired me. You had some expectations. When I behave incorrectly, you fire me, for my behavior. Well, why wouldn't we just talk about how you're behaving and interacting all the time? And that interaction got us closer to our goal, and that interaction didn't. So why don't we come up with a process that we are pretty sure is going to work 90 some percent of the time and then iterate, improvements?
How do you get people on board with this?
Okay, so this is the fun part. I'm going to give away all the secrets here. Um, I've done a lot of, in my career, large scale cultural change events in the 90s and early 2000s. That was a big deal. And I was right at the forefront of a lot of that. And it was all around values. So, I have a values based organization. And so what we would do is we'd go into an organization with a sense of guiding business principles and a sense of human values and human principles like truth and
Mm.
trust and honesty and compassion on the human side. And then it might be integrity, whatever the core business values are that drive the business. So in a bank, it would be accuracy. Well, it probably wouldn't be accuracy if you're an artist. It would be more like creativity. So there's the
Yep.
business values, and so I worked with like close to 40 companies. The largest was Deluxe Corporation, 24,000 people that we took through a process. The smallest was a little tool and die manufacturer, 30 people. It doesn't matter because it's human based. It doesn't matter if it's manufacturing or services. It's the human interactions that you called out that are either aligned with the purpose and the mission of the organization or not. And so that's where
Mm-hmm.
you get the execution gap, all that friction and interference that would just pull that out of there. So
Mm-hmm.
here's what we do. We look through your organization and with our help, you handpick internal facilitators. So these are people that are informal leaders, meaning they don't have a management title. They have never docked you a half day's pay for going to your grandmother's funeral. They've never done anything that would, set them up as
It's the you're eliminating the power structure
exactly.
situation. Yep.
And
Yep.
but also these people are people that you admire. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty cool dude.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we find them and we invite them in, and they almost always go, yeah, I'd like to see this company rock. And so then we team them up in teams of two because they've never done this before. And they are actually going to be facilitating the educational process. They're not actually teaching anything. We've got little videos that teach the concept or the tool or the idea, but they facilitate a conversation. And so here's how that works. We take all the managers. If you've got more than about 10 or 12 managers, we put them into multiple groups until we have about 10 or 12 in each group. And these facilitators walk them through kind of a heads up of what's coming in the organization. So they get to see it before anybody else. And it's a little more, I think we got a little sharper teeth in it just helping them understand is this is critical. If you're going to build a high performing team, you got to get good at this. And so this first thing is, how do we make and keep good promises? You call it delegation. We call it, we're going to make a promise. And so we're going to have an authentic conversation for action. And at the outcome of that is we have evoked a committed response, either yes or no. And so this is the process that we use. And they all go, oh my God, that looks so difficult. Why do you have to go through all those steps? Why don't you just tell people what you want them to do? It's like, for all the reasons that we're here.
Yeah.
And I say, oh, and, oh, by the way, this process is the exact same process you currently use with your customers. So get over it. Like, we do? Yeah. Your customer says, hey, I want you to do this for me. And you go, well, what do you mean by this? And you negotiate until you figure out exactly what the deliverables are and the time frame and the dollar amount and all that kind of stuff. And then you go off because you make a promise and you sign a contract. And then you go off, and then, oh crap, our lathe is down this week, and it's going to take a week, 2 weeks to get it repaired. And now you go back to the customer and say, here's the problem. We can ship it out to somebody else to get it made. It's going to increase the cost. If you can, we negotiate, and we keep them in the loop, good, bad, or ugly. We tell them what's going on. And then at some point, the project is done, and they either accept it or they reject it when it shows up on their dock, right? That's the exact same process in delegation. So you already use it with your company. This is nothing mysterious. You just have to use it. So, okay, I went too deep. But so we teach the managers the tool or the process, or sometimes it's just the concept, like people are fallible and you're fallible. And don't.
Well, the concepts are powerful, Bill. Like I have found that like inherently people understand the truth of the matter, but they don't know how to articulate it or grab onto something.
Yeah.
And the concepts allows them to grab onto it and then be able to discuss it.
Exactly. And when you realize, oh, these are fallible people who didn't bother to create a proven process. Oh, that's probably why it isn't working. So why don't we just keep working on the process so fallible people can have a really predictable outcome? So anyway, we bring the managers through it, and we say, some of you are probably doing this really, really well. You're just natural at it. And a few of them are like, yeah, I do this all the time. We negotiate. I don't call it negotiate, but I always ask for their opinion. I ask for their input. We raise any issues. We, as a team, we agree. And then other people are like, you do that with your team? I can't believe that. I just tell them what to do. I don't have time for that. And then in those meetings, we facilitate a conversation of, well, you might want to, because next week we're telling the whole organization that this is the new standard. And then
and when you say this is the new standard, would it, like, what are you saying is the standard? Is that we're going to be communicating like this, or like what is it that you're telling them is going to be different?
So on that particular month, we roll out one idea per month. We just keep it easy.
Okay.
So this month it is how to make and keep big promises. So that's delegation, because people are crappy at making commitments to one another in agreements. So we fix that. If you just fix how people make agreements, you fix so many problems in an organization. And this is the process we're going to use to make agreements. This is how you're going to negotiate. This is how you're going to keep people in the loop, and that's the process. Then we bring the rest of the organization together in groups of 10 or 12. And now we're taking a diagonal cross-functional slice through the organization. So maybe somebody from marketing, somebody from the shop, somebody from sales, somebody from engineering, somebody from customer service. And there will be a manager in that group, but not my manager. So that's what I mean by a diagonal. We will take, part of that hierarchy. We're doing that because we want to break up any tribal dysfunction.
Yep.
Like if you've got 8 guys that have been there for 30 years and they're not having any of this, and you try to talk to them, it's not cool. But you break them apart and mix them up with the whole organization. Then they get curious, like, oh, what goes on in your department? Oh, you guys do that? Geez, my boss just tells us what to do and tells us, if we have any questions, keep them to ourselves. It's that kind of a thing. And so they talk this through as we work through teaching the process. And here's where it gets
And are you facilitating? Is that happening in like specific, like different meetings throughout the week or the month, or like how, like
yeah, yeah.
what's the environment that's facilitating
Yeah,
it?
it's a 1 hour. So we pull people off the floor out of the for 1 hour a month. So it's
1 hour a month.
one
Okay.
hour out of 160 hours. We don't shut down
Yep.
production and we don't shut down any projects because any one
Yep.
person is only gone for 1 hour. And so
Yep.
you do that cross-functional learning cohort. That's where they are exposed to the idea and they can just discuss it in the safest environment we know how to create, which is no peer pressure. Everybody's curious. The power of that is you're very curious about what's going on in other departments, and there's somebody there who could actually tell you. Because one of the things I know you hear is, I don't, nobody tells me anything. I don't know what goes on in marketing. I don't know what those guys in accounting do. I don't understand what the senior leadership is up against. All this stuff becomes kind of the sidebar conversations around the topic of the month. And so now we're learning what's going on. And somebody will say something like, my manager is fantastic at that. I've got a great boss. I love working for them. And the other manager is listening because the manager's in that group going, geez, I don't do that. And then they're hearing somebody else in the group go, oh, my manager doesn't do that at all. And this is what,
You're just shaking it. You're shaking up all the norms and the ruts that human behaviors get into. I mean, I just honestly, like Bill, like I think about it, like my wife and I try to do date nights
yeah,
every week, and we fail a couple times a month, but like I mean we're striving for that. But the reason I'm saying we have to extract ourselves from the shit every so often to be like, are we doing what we should be doing? And you're shaking it up so that way
yeah.
you don't just continue doing what you're doing all the time and realizing that it's just the wrong thing.
You have to disrupt the pattern. And you have to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
people in a place where it's safe enough to talk about a better way. And so then we offer
Mm-hmm.
the better way. And then we say, okay, look, you're adults. This might not land perfectly on how you run your department, but which of these ideas make sense to you? Bring those back to your team, because I don't expect the way this lands on the marketing team to land exactly the same way on engineers or somebody who's running a
Mm-hmm.
CNC machine. I expect them to have different perspectives and life experiences that says, well, this isn't necessary, but this is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Or styles or
Just
whatever
take,
it might be.
yeah,
Yeah.
just take the great ideas. We're not forcing you. We're just saying, here's the ideal. Which
Do you find that sorry to interrupt, but like do you like because like I think about things that I've been a part of or that I've watched where it's the rigidity of like we're gonna back to what you've said a couple times. We're gonna extract leadership,
yeah,
force things down their throat. Here's the rigidity. Now go do this,
yeah,
and it's so unnatural for everything. It's like James Clear. I mean, what I'm hearing here is the atomic habits,
yeah.
habit stacking. You're just stacking on slowly.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're building little habits into, I'm calling them a process, or a
Mm-hmm,
practice. So we have these team practices. This is what we do when we're about to make a promise. This is what we do when we experience a breakdown.
mm-hmm,
This is what we do with drama. We actually have a
mm-hmm.
whole session on drama, and
I would love to hear that. One of my really close friends, he gives his people 2 minutes to bitch,
yeah.
and then that's it. And then he's like, now we can talk about the feedback forward or feed forward or whatever you call it.
So I don't know if you've read any of her books, but Cy Wakeman wrote a book called Reality-Based Leadership. And in
I have
there, her
not.
research is that the average American employee experiences 2.5 hours of drama every day. Uh,
I, c- I could see it, unfortunately.
so 2.5 hours of, this is BS. This is stupid. Why are they making me do this? This shouldn't be. Um, you're over there making a mountain out of a molehill. Just do your gall darn job. It's all of those things fall, and then the anxiety around it is I have way too much work on my plate, and I
Yeah.
don't like my conversations with my boss. She kind of spells it all out, but that's what we call interference in the leadership process. Here's how we deal with disengagement rather than engagement. Um, so Larry Wilson, if you knew Larry Wilson from Wilson Learning, in the 70s, he had a $50 million training company, which was,
Okay.
today it'd be half a billion.
Yep.
Pecos River Learning, that's all Larry Wilson. Counselor Selling, that's Larry Wilson. Anyway, he became a dear friend of mine before he passed a few years back. And so one of his concepts is performance is potential minus interference.
Ooh, I like that.
And so all we do with the leadership process for the most part is remove interference. We just remove constraint. It's the theory of constraints in manufacturing.
Oh, I love the book, The Goal.
Yeah.
Bill. Yeah,
So
I love it. And
what?
yeah, yeah,
So what if we
fascinating.
just kept removing people's constraints? What I don't need a kegerator and beer Thursday. I need just take the friction out of my life. So now we have these cross-functional teams, and they've learned the idea. Then we send them back to their normal, regular, natural team. So finance gets together, the warehouse people get together, and they go, "You guys were in all these sessions all over the company. Now, what came to mind that if we fixed it would make your job easier, more productive, or more fun?" So that's the interference, right? We're going to just remove interference. And they go, "Well, why do we have to do this stupid thing?" And everybody bubbles up all their ideas, and we pick one. And ideally, it's high impact, low effort. Let's just pick the low hanging fruit and get some small wins under our belt to see that we can actually take action to create a better future for ourselves and the organization, because that's what leaders do. Let's just go fix that. And so they do. And then the next month we roll out another topic, and we just hijack one of their normal team meetings and we make a portion of it. Let's go fix something that creates friction. And it might be, why do we have to sit on these stupid chairs that give us all back pain? Why don't we get some decent chairs? And it
It's
could be
the
that.
TPS reports.
I don't, why do I have to fill out this report that nobody reads?
You know what I'm talking about when I talk the TPS reports in the office space, and he's like the TPS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what do you do here? I don't know. I've been doing these TPS reports.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Well, I worked with, they became Rock 10, but it was Waldorf Paper Company back in the day. And one of their executives from Chicago moved to Minneapolis, and I got to work with him. And we were talking about this, and he said, "Well, that's interesting." He said, "When I landed here at Waldorf, people came up to me and said, 'Oh, you're the new so-and-so guy.' And I said, 'I guess I am.' And they go, 'Well, do you still want the report that we sent to old Joe?' He goes, I don't know. 'Well, what about these other reports that he made us make?' He goes, tell you what, why don't you go ahead and make the report, then put it in your desk and don't forward it to anyone until somebody asks for it.'"
I love it so much. I love it.
And you already know the answer. It was like 3 reports
Yeah.
survived out of 20,
Yeah.
because it was something that somebody wanted once on the spur of the moment. It was a half-baked idea. It became
So you're taking, Bill, you're taking these one meetings a month, introducing this concept or these ideas, and then is it naturally happening
yeah.
in the departmental cultures and stuff like that?
Yeah, because nobody argues with their own solution. So if I say, "Ryan, what is one thing that would make your marriage happier? What is one thing that would make your job easier? What was one thing that would make you more productive?" And you come up with it. It's like, well, I'm not going to argue with that because you just told me that you're already
Yeah.
motivated for it. So,
Yep.
so it's not, we don't just let it happen, lackadaisically. We actually take a evaluation of every single
Just
meeting.
like feedback system or something.
Yeah, we got an internal check on that. So every meeting is evaluated, and I mean, the boss knows they're getting evaluated, but it's really the meeting. And we say, did we pick the right topic? Did we pick the right project and initiative? First of all, did we agree on the right thing? Second, was everybody open and honest and contributing? The third was, I think, is there anything in particular we could do to improve this meeting next time? There might have been a fourth question. I'm blanking on it, but the manager who has that meeting gets that feedback back from the team. And the first few times they're like, yeah, it's all fine. You know? But that's why we want to pick an easy thing to win so that we can practice without a lot of risk on the table. And then,
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Yep.
and then
Yep.
as we move through the process, we move from leadership and professionalism. We start to getting into the team tools. Then we get into the nitty gritty stuff of personal mastery and the ability to receive feedback and incorporate it.
Feed forward, Bill. Come on. No, I'm just kidding.
What about it?
Right? I said feed forward,
Well,
not feed
yeah,
back. No,
exactly.
just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah. But we don't start off on day one with crucial conversations because you'll blow the whole thing out of the water. We start on just
Yeah.
let's be
Yeah.
professionals and let's just move up the ladder.
There's so many, and it must be from a lot of your background of the change management, because in James Clear's Atomic Habits, it's like, put your running shoes out in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, don't go for the run right now. Like, you're picking those
Yeah.
little tiny dopamine wins, so that way the risk isn't there.
Well, actually, we talk about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins at the management level. Because if you are creating a high performing team, your team is getting all of the happy brain chemicals. So dopamine is we're setting a goal that's personally important to you, right? Oxytocin and serotonin. Oxytocin is the bonding one. If we're in this together and we're shoulder to shoulder, I get oxytocin. Serotonin is the antidepressive, but that also comes from a sense of achievement. When you're moving in the right direction, your serotonin levels come up, and endorphins are, God, we're working hard, but God, we're making, you're getting that achievement. So we don't.
Which let me interrupt there for a second, because like, I think what's super cool, Bill, is like what you're doing is you're taking the fundamentals of like the science behind this, and it's probably the engineering part of you, but like I think what you just walked through, like those four chemicals, like, because I've been I've been in places where like it doesn't matter what I'm doing, as long as I can create that environment. I could be packing boxes. I could be doing strategic planning. I could be doing art. Like for me, because I just want to have fun. Ikigai. I don't know if you ever heard of that phrase, but it's like this, Japanese term about like providing value, making money, working with good people. I mean, like you're creating this environment where it doesn't matter what you're doing. You you happen to be you're creating that environment for the people. You just so happen to be doing accounting or doing marketing and I just think it's interesting on how you're tackling all that, because that can be that that's what people need at the fundamental level.
Oh, I appreciate your seeing the nuance, because before we created this, I was looking at, okay, so individual psychology, group dynamics, social psychology. What do we know about that? What do we know about adult learning models? Well, adults have to understand something. First, I have to understand it. Why would we use this approach to making promises? I have to understand it. Then I either have to agree or disagree with it. If I agree with it, I'm still not there. I have to practice it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an executive leadership quiz. Three executives from the leadership team are sitting on a log, and they agree we should swim to shore. How many are still on the log? Well, all three, because agreeing is different from doing. And so,
I love it.
and so
Yeah.
it isn't. It has to turn into action, and that's when you learn. And also, the very first time, you're not going to do it very well. And that's why we're
Mm-hmm.
picking what is the easiest first thing that'll make your job better. What if we went through and just improved the lighting around here? Done. Great. Now what's the next thing? Hey, why don't we do a 7S and clean this place up and put stuff in its proper place so I don't have to spend an hour a day looking for stuff? Okay, done. Let's do it. These are not difficult things. They're written about in all of the literature, but what's the impetus for doing them? Some guy up top said you have to have a 7S system. So it
Mm-hmm.
is no,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is what would improve my environment. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the whole
What's the
concept.
so what's the overall cadence and structure for like 12 months, or like what, because like
Yeah.
with that, I'm assuming there's this exponential curve, because like back to like Atomic Habits, and you're slowly getting better at all
Yeah.
this stuff, and
Yeah.
you're like, so You're saying once a month there's a meeting.
Yep. Yeah.
What's like the cadence? And then what, I know you've got some results now that you've been working with companies doing this, and you've seen some pretty interesting
Yeah,
data
so
that's come
I'll
back.
start with the case study. The first and we've improved the process. We took the feedback that we got from it and we tightened it up. But so company, 125 people, manufacturing environment, specialty machining, some really unique stuff. Some of their stuff is rolling around on Mars right now, so it's high tech
Oh my gosh, cool.
stuff. And they were a 100% ESOP, but the guy that sold the company into the ESOP probably sold it for more than it was worth. So,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Then he signed a 25-year lease that the company had to lease his building back from him, and then he patted them all on the back and said, have a great future. But he was also kind of a benevolent dictator that all the decisions had to come up to him and all the.
It just be before you continue, I just have to insert my own anecdotal thoughts on this. Is like the corporate structure does not change the culture of the operations, whether it's an ESOP, C Corp, LLC, S Corp. And so many people are like, oh, ESOPs are this or that. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
No.
It's like it has the rocket fuel potential to enhance because
Yeah.
the employees will get some ownership, but if the management and the culture is one way, it's just going to be the second way, the second. So this
Yep.
person inherently slapped it with probably more debt than they should have,
Yep.
and just assumed everything was just going to naturally, mystically turn into perfect, perfect execution because it's an ESOP, which has like it's just such a false set of assumptions,
It
I guess is
is.
my point. And that's I
Yeah,
just
yeah. So
wanted to get my
it does
own
not solve the management gap. It doesn't solve the execution gap. It
right.
doesn't solve the leadership gap. It doesn't
Yep.
solve the engagement gap. All of those
But
gaps.
if you do all the stuff that you're talking about and it's an ESOP, I think it can just exponentially enhance it because the ownership
Yeah.
vesting can be a result of all the stuff that we've talked about so far.
Now you're seeing your stock finally start to do this.
Yep.
Now all of a
Yep.
sudden
Yep.
your 20-30% increases. You're beating the stock market with your
Yep.
ESOP.
Yep. Yep.
So that was the environment. And just to make matters worse, this is on our website. You can read the whole case study on our website.
Okay. And we'll put the links in the show notes.
So they bring in a new CFO, and she is a former CEO slash COO, excuse me, and CFO. She's got a master's in international finance from Oxford, and she's been working for PE companies and doing slash and burn turnaround. And she's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm making millionaires. I need to be. Let's create value.
Yeah.
So,
That's
so
awesome.
she comes in as the CFO, and a few months into her experience there, the board of directors fires the president, the head of manufacturing, the head of everything except for the head of engineering, and her CFO makes her temporary CEO while they start a search. And she's like, well, I do know how to turn around companies. I do know finances, and we are in trouble, but okay. She goes out, meets with their top 10 customers, 9 of which said, I'm really glad you're here. We were just starting to look for new suppliers. We are so disgusted with your performance. And she's tell me. So she saves all 9 accounts. They were losing a couple million. She turns it around, or they make a few million that year. So now they got maybe a 10% bottom line off of 25 million, something like that. But in the meantime, she's the CFO, the CEO, the chief operations officer. She's doing all of that stuff, trying to build her executive team. All of this is happening, and then 2020 hits, COVID hits,
Oh my gosh.
George Floyd, riots. I mean,
A local Minnesota company here, then I'm assuming.
Minnesota company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of this is going on, and she started to make inroads. But to give you a sense of how entitled their workforce is I think it was from France. So a customer flies in from France, 3, 4, 5 guys from France to see their specific product being made, and it comes the end of the day, and the manager. The way I remember the story is The managers who's walking them through their process goes, "Hey guys, it's 3:30. It's quitting time, and I got to go," and walks off the floor and leaves them standing on the floor. I might not have that story exactly right because I heard her tell it two different ways, or maybe it was two different events. But the net result was
You get the concept
you
of
get
like
the
how bad it
concept.
was, though.
So when we started the leadership process, they had a standard shop rate, and they were at 77% of rate. So think of terms of quantity and quality per labor hour. They were hitting
Hmm.
77%. That's what she inherited. That's after already working on it before we started the leadership process. The reason she asked me to help her build the leadership process, because I built it specifically for her with my understanding of how large scale change effort works. And I said, I have never seen anybody do large scale change solving for leadership and teamwork and productivity. So if you'll let me, I'll design it that way. So that's how it started. um, so they were at 77% of productivity. Um, as of June of this year, they're at 99.8%. They were at 20% turnover. As of June of this year, they're at 4% turnover. Their Gallup engagement scores have doubled. And I think their stock went up over 30 some percent this year. I mean, the last few years, it's like 25, 30, 30, she set a goal to double their top line sales in 5 years. Well, they're going to hit it in 4. So in 2025, they'll be a year ahead of the target.
And how much would she attribute to, because like she had the inherent skill sets to do this without what you do. So
Exactly.
how did she,
So
because she had relativity, right? Because she'd done it
yeah,
in the past without you,
yeah,
and now she had it with this. How
yeah.
what
That's a
was her
great.
feedback
Yeah,
on that?
the leadership process is not the hero here. The people of her organization and her leadership team, they identified some markets that they could go after. They identified 2 acquisitions that they could make. They realized that they needed some proprietary product because they were just a job shop, and so
Hmm.
they knew that they had to get their backlog from, like, if you came in and it took 14 weeks to deliver, they needed to get that down to 4 weeks because people would pay $80,000 for a product that they could use in 4 weeks, and they'd pay maybe 16,000 if it was going to
Hmm.
be 16 weeks. So they had these out the door in 4. We want to be a preferred customer for all these customers. They had established really smart strategies. And
Hmm.
and she came to me, she said, "Bill, I need a people strategy that's as robust as my turnaround
Actual
strategy,
strategy.
because
Yeah.
I can't live with 77." She didn't say this, but she couldn't live with
Yep.
those levels of productivity. She couldn't live with the entitlement.
The execution gap. I mean, like this is what I love. It's the people theory of constraints, right? You're
Yeah.
just eliminating the friction so they can get to their goals faster.
The people theory of constraints would be a really fun way to think about this. Is
Hmm.
if you took all the friction and interference that your people experience out of your organization, first of all, how many people would you need, frankly?
Yeah.
Because they were productive almost all day. And that's what.
Well, and the level of satisfaction. I mean, honestly, like it's what I don't miss about having 115 employees.
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't want to be a politician for my job,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and it's so interesting. The very first session, we don't give them any tools or skills at all. We simply say, who are the people you admire? Who are the leaders around you? These are the fallible human leaders. And for example, it might be the single mom down the street holding it together, raising 3 kids. It might be your grandfather that served in Vietnam, and now he's the guy that shovels the sidewalk. He's 82 and he shovels the other people's sidewalk. And you
Yep.
look,
Yep.
and we just say, who do you admire? What is it that you admire about them? And they always come down to, they just do what has to be done. They just see an opportunity to make a better future, and they do it. And then we'd say, well, tell us about the best leaders you ever had. Well, the best leaders, how did you feel and respond when you had what you called a great leader? Oh, I felt engaged. I was creative. I'd work extra hours. I mean, well, what did they think about you? Well, they thought I was capable. They thought I was worthy. They thought I had potential. And then what? And then I responded that way. And if you had a bad
Hmm.
manager, what did they think? They didn't. They thought they had to control me. And then how did you respond? I can't. I don't want to tell you. I had a lot of workaround strategies. I'd avoid them.
I mean, it's, you know what it is, Bill? It's like I'm just on this kick. I mean, obviously, my new program is called Independence by Design, but I think every human being just wants sovereignty and to realize their full potential. And tyranny
Yeah,
is universally disgusting.
absolutely. We don't tell me what to do. Don't make me do anything. Give me an opportunity to create with you.
Yeah, yeah.
So the very first
Amen.
session, we don't even give them a tool. We just say, so if you applied this idea of doing the right thing, even if it was difficult, what are some of the things around here that, if you're honest, they should be fixed? We just shouldn't put up
Hmm.
with this anymore. And like in that first company, I think they had 33 ideas the very first month. Now, so two of them, one of them was bring more donuts to meetings and have a company picnic, which it met the criteria of make your job more fun. So they weren't actually out of bounds. But one of them was this, our ERP system glitches right here. One of them was we have this counting challenge that this particular platform we're operating on makes it really difficult to transfer files. We got to fix that. And there's everything in between. Some of it went straight to the executive leadership team because they were the only ones that could decide it. Most of it was, hey, we could get this stuff done if we just went after it. Um,
That's awesome.
uh,
So back to so you got a monthly meeting.
yep.
What's the cadence
So,
for, well, like
so
what's the commit, like if someone's listening, go like what's the commitment? Okay, got the monthly meeting.
yeah, it's
There's
not
probably tools and stuff like that they're using to have the feedback and to track the stuff. But what's the
excellent. So it sounds heavy the way we've been describing it. It plays light. We find
I like that?
the internal facilitators. I meet with them for 90 minutes once a month and we do a train the trainer. We don't take anybody off site for 3 days. We don't do any of that. It's just in time. So we just in time meet with the facilitators, the ones that are going to facilitate the management sessions and the ones that are going to facilitate the cross-functional learning cohort. They're all together. They all hear all of it. They know, all of them know what the managers have heard. All of them knows what's going to happen. And I just take them through a slightly accelerated version, just a little bit faster than they're going to do it. And they have a facilitator's guide that tells them exactly how to keep the conversation going. And at this point, ask this question and hey, bring your own example here. And I just do that with them until they feel like I'm comfortable. Yeah, I got it. We're good.
Hmm.
So we do that once a month. They break out and they do the management sessions, they do the other sessions. And so now that's where everybody in the organization has basically 1 hour where they're learning it. And then, so now the total
Hmm.
commitment for the rank and file person is 1 hour. Managers is 2 because they went through their own session and they went through everybody else.
Yep.
And then we hijack one of their standard team meetings. So you're going to have a level 10 meeting at the executive
Hmm.
team. We move that into an application meeting. You're going to have a shop meeting. A lot of those week after week kind of gets kind of stale. So we pick one of
Yep.
those.
Yep.
And that's where we apply the idea and they pick a project and go do it. That's the whole process. And then we just do that. We'll do
It's iterative. Yeah, it's
it's just
awesome.
it.
I mean,
So
yeah.
we do 3 months and then we do a quarterly pause and review. So that's where I step in and I actually facilitate the session with the managers. They've got a couple under their belt. Now I come in, I can challenge them more aggressively than their internal facilitators can.
Hmm.
And really tell them, you guys got to hang together. You guys have got to help each other be better at this and learn these processes. Because I don't believe Gallup is right that there are 4 out of 5 managers are bad. I believe 4 out of 5 managers are following a bad process. That's what I think is happening. So we help them. So 3 sessions, quarterly review. Then we move into 3 more sessions, quarterly review. And if behavioral psychologists are right, and it takes somewhere between 12 and 18 months to actually design a new habit. And when you are doing it in a team environment, it takes longer than if you're doing it
Makes sense. Yeah.
getting to the gym every day. So the entire process is 16 months, which, like, 16 months is
It's not that long.
it's actually forever. The process is forever because once
Well, you're just setting the flywheel into motion is what you're doing.
we get it rolling and then you continue it. And so
Mhm.
every month you have an application meeting and you solve some problem every month. And if you want, hey, go pick session 4.
And they're entering. I love how you've used the word hijack, because it's not just another meeting. You're inserting all of these habits into things and structures that they already are doing.
Yeah, it's well, and when people aren't honest with themselves, their meetings, unless they are highly effective meetings, which most of them aren't, they're not loving those meetings anyway. They kind of love a meeting where they get to solve their own problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the process, and I tell people, hey, if it's not forever, it's not a process, is it? You know, you don't
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't do total quality once. You know, you don't do gap accounting once. You know, this is you don't.
Well, you know what? Here's another analogy that I'd have, and then we can wrap up. I want to get your contact information. Is like, it's the difference between the crash diets and crash exercise crap compared to an actual routine.
Lifestyle.
I mean, honestly, Bill, like, I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but I got 19 years worth of workout journals there. And I don't say that for any egotistical reason other than the fact that, like, I just slowly started.
Yeah.
And like, I've watched people, hundreds of people, start and stop.
Yeah.
And like, well, I can see them like that. There's no way. Like, what is it, the 75 or whatever it is? I was just talking to a buddy about them. Like, there's no way you're going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you have to enter it into your routine, make sure there's less friction, and you're slowly just iterating over time.
Yeah.
And then it's just normal.
Yeah. It is. What's the it's how interest accrues over time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
interest.
and you know, people talk about how like relationships compound over time, and if you're eliminating that friction from the machine, that is then inherently lifting it up further. And it's the people friction. And it's not the other. Yeah. This has been so fun, Bill. I'm very excited about how this conversation turned out, because, you know, I totally understand what you got at, the headwinds with the word leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a tough deal because of, you got, what'd you say, 57,000 books.
Yeah.
And it's the same stuff of like any kind of, I mean, there's just so much fluffy shit out there these days. And like, it's not about that. And I hope that you see the success that like James Clear saw with Atomic Habits, where like no one needs another workout routine.
Yeah.
Or we're crash diet. Like, I mean, like because at the end of the day, the fundamentals are the fundamentals. And it's like, how many times do we need to regurgitate what Socrates said? Or, you know what I mean? Like, how many books need to be but like, you've taken something that I think is abstract, which is the people part.
Yeah.
And broken that down into something that it can actually be tackled. Because I mean, I'm watching with my clients, Bill. I mean, like, it's a scary thing to say, because I think like, if I were to, you know, sum up a lot of my clients who are all owner operators, you know, call it 5 to 150 million ish or something like that. Like, they do a lot of the stuff naturally that you're talking about, which is why they have amazing companies. But then also, that is the huge disconnect. If they were to sell to private equity or a strategic buyer, that's where all of that stuff is a mixed match.
Right.
But also, it's like, it even frustrates them, because even if they want to keep the business, they're necessary as a part of that DNA of that culture to accomplish what you're talking about. And this is another tool that's a way out of the job, but allows them to free themselves up for choices of what to do with the asset.
Yeah.
It's a tangible thing.
Well, I love how you're thinking about this. There are many entrepreneurs they're typically smart, passionate people. They can wear a lot of hats, and then unfortunately they do. and they're wearing the
Hmm.
marketing hat when they're not wearing the strategic hat, and they're wearing the finance hat when they're not wearing the operational excellence hat. And so they haven't codified
Codified. Yep.
team practices. And so it's
Yep.
sort of
Yep.
like it works while they're working it, and then they delegate it to somebody else, or the next person comes on the team.
And it just and
Yeah,
it fizzles and all falls
because
apart. And they're like, yeah, this is what I want out of
it was
this. Yeah,
never codified.
exactly.
It wasn't, and so that's kind
Yeah.
of what we did is we just broke it down. I mean, any of the stuff that we teach, you can go read it in a dozen leadership. Well, you can read it in 50,000 leadership books. It's none of this. It's not the content. Is leadership. It was never the content. It was the delivery. They weren't delivering
Yeah.
it in a with the team so they could practice the play together, so that they could move the ball down the field in a thoughtful, intentional way.
Bridge or reducing the execution gap,
Yeah,
which is increasing the potential that they have behind their goals.
yeah.
Man, Bill, this has been so fun. Do you want me to add the PDFs that you sent into the show notes, or do you want them just to reach out to go to your website? Where can people find you?
Yeah, well, certainly go to our website. So it's theleadershipprocess.com. And we've got a case study there, and we've got a bunch of Harvard articles.
So you got a lot of the stuff that you sent me
I
on the
think
website.
I
Then?
think so.
Okay, cool.
Um, I th- I think I might have. Did I send you the one-page executive summary PDF?
I mean, I've got a lot of sheets out here.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
threw a lot.
So I mean, but if they can find you on the website and reach out, I mean, like it's
That's the easy.
I'm excited. You know what we should do is we should get you into my ownership accelerator group coaching call with my clients.
I'd love it.
Like,
Happy.
yeah, that would be fun because I think that this is the anxiety that people have about codifying what they're already naturally doing to make it a system. I think is something that you've identified and be a lot of fun.
I would do that in a minute. Thank you. This has been fun, Ryan.
Bill, thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
It's anytime. Thank you.
You know, before we go, you know what we should do? We should have that gal that is in your case study.
Oh,
It'd
yeah.
be fun to have you or her on, or maybe both of you two on.
She's amazing. You would love talking with her.
That would be a blast, man.
If you want, I'll invite her and we can do she can walk you through, because you were asking a great question. How much was her and her leadership
Yeah.
and her, just good entrepreneurial smarts, and then how much of it was the leadership process? And I think she can.
Well, then I
speak
want
to
to
that.
even about like the ESOP and the dumpster fire she walked into, like what like led to that. But yeah, that would be fun, my friend.
Okay, great. I'm sure she'd be happy to do that.
Fun having you on. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. We'll see you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found the time valuable and you took some good information out of the conversation with Bill. I was super pumped because so many times culture and leadership is a bunch of fluffy bullshit, and Bill's broken it down using the theory of constraints, atomic habits, psychology, and just quantifying 2.5 hours of drama is a lot. And that kind of drama introduces friction, it impacts productivity, and it brings you the anxiety of the owner operator where you don't want to step back because your DNA and your emotional intelligence is the glue that keeps everything together. And by implementing something that's easily digestible, by hijacking some already set meetings, by setting new standards, oh my gosh, I got excited about even working in one of the cultures that Bill was talking about. Because if I were to reflect on the team that I built at our family business prior to selling, it was a lot of what we're talking about, but it was because of my sheer effort. And I see that in my clients all the time that they've done that work, but extracting themselves from the equation has such a risk. And I am just very bullish about what Bill's system can do. Go check out his material. I know he's got those PDFs and all the stuff that I was referencing during the conversation. Next week is going to be a great addition to this conversation because I have Mike McCallowitz back on the show. He's going to be talking about his new book, All In, How Great Leaders Build Unstoppable Teams. You're going to absolutely love it. Thanks everybody for tuning in today, and I will see you next week.